We'd like to start out by thanking our valuable sponsors. Sense of Satisfaction by Cricket is the place for all your fragrance needs. Plus, she's got products to heal what ails your skin and your hair. Shop at scentsbycricket.com. Special thanks to our valued sponsor, John Travis, a financial coach and certified Kingdom advisor with Richard Young Associates, a registered investment advisor. Thanks goes to Anna Patterson, my sister in the Lord who faithfully gives to this ministry every month. And to our newest sponsor, LaToya Gerard of Preach the Word Worldwide Network. She is a valued sponsor and a major encourager regarding this ministry. We need and would love to have you as a sponsor. Absolutely no gift is too small. Please note the info regarding giving throughout and at the end of the show, and help us spread these testimonies around the world. Please note that the views and opinions expressed on this show are not necessarily the viewpoints of our sponsors. It's time to hear the story, make the connection, learn the lesson, and gain the wisdom. Are you ready? Let's get charged and be changed. The Sister Speak Brother Break Show. Conversations on grace, healing, and deliverance. This is Marcy Bush. Come on, let's journey together.
This was my first time on a plane. This was my first time leaving the state alone, and I went there, and that's when the transformation started to happen, because it reminded me of Moses in the Bible when Abraham, when God told Abraham to leave your father's home. Abraham went. And, I don't know what sparked that to go to the military. I don't know what sparked that, but I went. And that's when I started to shed some things off. And that's when I started to shine, because nobody knew me there. There was nobody from Zion Fair. There was nobody from Silver Bluff. There was nobody, like I told you, I went to college with people, like with friends I knew, but there was nobody. So there was nobody. So this was my first time having to meet new people, having to make my way on my own. And yes, I still made mistakes. I still wanted to be the best, in everything. I wanted to make everybody proud still at home. So I wanted to have the best, marksman score. I wanted to just be the best soldier. I wanted to be the best. I wanted to excel at everything. But the first few, I will say that was 2010. In May, I went. And so then in November of 2010, I got to my first duty station, which was Fort Stewart in Hinesville, Georgia, like near Savannah, Georgia. That is where I didn't meet God then. I didn't meet God. This was 2010. I didn't meet God until 2014. So, but this is when things started changing for me. I met my husband. That's a story in of itself.
Okay.
Just when we met, just that transformation of all. And we had a rough few years of our marriage. We met, he was getting out of a marriage. He had been married before. He had got married early, like 18 or 19. So he was getting out of this marriage that he wasn't supposed to be in, that God revealed to him. So we are, we meet each other. We're married, and we find out early in the marriage that I think I was married a month, and I found out we were pregnant with Jakell, and we are trying to navigate. My husband struggled with PTSD. Before I met him, Joe had already been in the military 10 years prior to the meeting. So he had a number of stuff going on. He was taking medicine to sleep. He was hot. He was a functional alcoholic. He was chain smoking cigarettes. And it's just like, I was like, what was God doing? Like, how did I even meet you? Like, how did we even hit it off? You had so much going on. You was a red flag.
He was the whole red flag, Jakell?
He was a series of red flags, you know. It's just like, what in the world? But then, so after we were married, we still were at Fort Stewart. Then this was about 2012, 2013, we went to Fort Leonard Wood again. So that's where I went for basic training. Then I went to Georgia. So now we're going to Fort Leonard Wood again. My husband had just got denied for not a promotion, but a position that he wanted because of something that he had got in trouble for previously. So they were like, we're still sending you guys to Fort Leonard Wood. We went to Fort Leonard Wood. We used to be fighting in the street. Like, he was still drinking. He was suicidal. He was just like with that PTSD. He would turn into a completely different person that night. Like, I was like, I'm about to leave this man. I don't know what I'm doing with him. It just, we were like, that's a different story for a different day. But I want to get to the part of where things started to change, is because one thing, we grew up a pastor's kid, but one thing we knew was we got to find a church. And so we went to a church there, and it was a predominantly white church, but it was a Baptist church. And that's all I knew was a Baptist church. So I was like, well, we just gonna go here. And we met another couple, and they were like, well, we heard about this church. So we can visit the church next week. So we went to visit church.
Uh-oh, it's glitching again.
And
hang on. Okay, so you said there was a couple who said they heard about a church.
They heard about a church from her coworker, and it was called Metamorphosis Outreach Empowerment Center.
Okay.
Went there for the first time. Now, this couple that invited us, they went that one Sunday with us and never came back. Okay. But we went in there, and I was like, well, here go all the people that look like us. You know, we met these people at this church, and this church was so free. This church was unlike anything I had ever seen before, because people were at the altar, they were worshiping, they were crying, they were speaking in tongues, they were praying, they was laying on of hands. And at first that intimidated me, because I'm like, we don't do this at the church, we don't do this, we don't do this. But after being there for some time, and we started meeting, we met the pastor and the elder. And so the pastor and elder of that church, that was the pastor was the wife, and her husband was, we called him elder. He was the elder of the church, and it was about 200 members. The transformation, we started learning about spiritual warfare. We started learning about fruits of the spirit. We started learning about who Jesus was. I remember sitting in a Bible study, and all my years of Easter Sunday with just dressed up, hats on, I never really understood what the Resurrection Sunday was about. We started learning, we started having this transformation of leaving a religious mindset into a relationship with Christ. And that is where I started. That is where I met Jesus. That's where I had an encounter with Christ. That's where I received the Holy Spirit. That's where I started to shake off all of that people pleasing. That's where I started to shake off all of that self-doubt and insecurity, and not really knowing who I was, and learning about the Bible, learning how to read the Bible, learning how to study the Bible, learning, finding Jesus in the Old Testament. Like, that church transformation, we went in like worms. Okay. Me and did, and just like, and it had to be. That's why I said God wasn't everything, because I had to be. And all those things that I went through at Morris as a child, like all of these things, they started having names, because now I'm like, okay, this is a spirit. I can pray about this. I can be free from this. I can be healed from this. And it was in small settings where I was telling my story. I told these people what happened, at Morris College, and they hugged me. They came around me. They cried over me. They prayed over me. They, when I had a miscarriage there as a member when we were at that church. It was they came and prayed over me. It was just always just laying on hands, just a different type of love. And like I said, not saying that I wasn't loved before, but a love through Christ that it was able to, it was transforming. It was just able to change, and then to understand boundaries about giving, at this place, because this church did a lot of, community outreach. They just, not even the title, and not any shade, but all the churches in the South were called something Missionary Baptist Church, but this church was out there. This church was out with the homeless. This church was out with the in the low income neighborhoods, feeding the kids, just doing different things. And we learned so much more. Like my husband, his story is his story, but he quit smoking cigarettes cold turkey. He quit drinking alcohol cold turkey. I mean, there was no detox. He was healed from PTSD. He used to have to take like 3 different prescriptions just to sleep and wake up and function. None of that anymore. Just this, the man that I'm married to now, I know that God was doing what he was doing, but I didn't see it then. But just the transformation that we had to meet Christ in this place. And it's not often that you hear of a husband and a wife getting saved together, but we did. A lot of times you hear about the woman, and then the man is like, I ain't doing all that. No, we got saved together. We started praying over things. We started just speaking life over ourselves, just over Jakell, like you said, you was a cusser. All that went away. That just fell off when we entered into this new relationship with Christ. The shame was gone. That I remember always saying that word, transparent. Our pastor, she always preached about being transparent. And when I started telling the story to them, all that shame started falling off, like just like scales almost. It just, that heaviness started falling off, where I found out who I was, hobbies that I wanted to do, raising my kids this way, making my home this way, being in my marriage this way. Like,
it sounds beautiful.
It's just like, it was like being healed, and like you had nothing to hide anymore. There was no more hiding, because it just like, it drew you out. And I have I can't even describe it any other way. It's like walking out of a grave.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things, even when you talk about your time at college, one of the things that really grabbed me was just thinking about that shame. And shame will drive you into a very dark place. It makes you feel unreachable, unapproachable, and I heard somebody, it's been a couple of years ago, on this show I was watching, and she said how people be like, shame on you. That's speaking a curse.
It is.
That is speaking a curse. Shame on you.
Take you out.
Yes, that is something you never say to somebody, is shame on you. If those of us who are in Christ, if there is the propensity for shame, then we should be pulling them in and embracing them and breaking that thing off.
Right.
Because I'm telling you, shame is what leads to so much darkness, to those thoughts of suicide. It is, shame is like a shelter for depression.
Yeah. And I think that was the root. Like I said, I don't want to get too much, because Joe's story is his story. That was my husband. That was one of the things.
You got me wanting to talk to Joe. I'm about to tell you, I need to talk to Joe.
Because that was one of his things growing up as a pastor's kid. That was shame. He felt a lot of shame of things that he had done, like with this with this marriage that his parents told him, like, this ain't his first one, but he did it anyway. So then he had the shame of a divorce. Then he had the shame of, dealing with this drinking problem, dealing with this wanting to commit suicide, dealing with wanting to, this cigarette, and like all these things like this, all these addictions he had. He didn't go home to his hometown. He didn't go home for a long time just because of shame.
Mm-hmm.
Just seeing that break off of him at that place, and just how his relationship with his family has just blew up, because he was able to get out of shame, and he had a group at the same church. It was a group of men where he could tell his story, where he could tell things that he had been through without shame.
Mm-hmm.
And just when I say just about the sexual immorality that I went through, telling that, because we also had a women's group, telling that, speaking to teenagers about the shame that,
Right.
with that, like you're doing something, you think you're being so grown, but that shame that's attached to you when you walk out that door the next morning, or when they leave, and just that embarrassment,
Right.
that
Right.
secret. But when you break free and you get into an environment where people know the Lord, and they're not there to shame or judge you, and they love you, and they pray over you, and they walk you through healing, and that has no more power.
Right.
I spoke at an event last year, and that was a question they asked on a panel, is how do things look different in the dark versus when you have the light of Christ? And I said, when you are in the dark, as I was, everything looks bigger and scarier than it really is. But when you turn on the light, you see, like, oh, that was just a coat hanger. That just was a thing. That was just that thing is not scary at all. But when you shine light on your downfalls and your mistakes that you made, and you expose it, and you tell, the devil doesn't have any power.
Right.
Or because you don't have no secret over me. I done told you everything, So it's like,
girl, and I know there are people who probably think about you like they do about me. Like, some people think, oh, you overshare. You ain't sharing at all. I mean, God, and we overcome by the blood of the Lamb
and the
and
word of
our test. Yes. And the rest of that verse says something like, not loving. I wanna do it right. I want to say it right, because it was only like last year when I'm like, you know what, there's a whole different part to that scripture that I hadn't been saying. Let's see. So it says, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they loved not their lives unto death. And I believe that so many times we love our lives, our images, that we don't expose. And so while we have the blood, we don't have true freedom, because we have not spoken. We have not given our testimonies. And we love our lives and what people think of them so much that we don't share. But in sharing, we free other people.
right. And I spoke about postpartum. I had postpartum depression with my first kid and with the last one. And I remember at a women's conference, and I spoke about, Jada was 2 months old when I spoke at this conference. And I told them about my struggle with anxiety and just that postpartum depression. And so many women came up to me after that and was like, I feel the exact same way. When Joe and I shared church now, we shared a testimony, a video of the struggles in our marriage, from that dark place to where we used to fight, and where he was and when I say Joe was suicidal, there was one day Joe was leaving with a gun, and I grabbed, after we had been in a fight, and I grabbed his legs, and I held on to his legs, and he dragged me through the floor, because I knew if he had walked out that day, I would have been a widow. And so we talked about that, and the church filmed it and played it on Easter Sunday. So many people came up to us and said, that was us. That was our story. That encouraged me. Because we were not afraid to share, because we were not afraid to tell people what God has done, what God had transformed. Yes. What unredeemable things, or what people would say in our culture, oh, that's shameful, or that dirty, or that this, how he took those things and completely changed. Like when people meet my husband now, you don't even know the half. You don't even know who I married. He married, married, and so just knowing that. And it's because we spoke about it. When we got to that church, and when we opened up our mouth and we started telling people what we struggled with, where we came from, what happened, we got so free. I mean, I'm telling you, it was like stone was falling off your body, just that heavy. If only people know what I had done, if people really knew me, or if my son got out, what would they say about me? And when you go into this place and you tell that,
and see, it's glitching again. Hold on.
Over that. Those don't on you and I.
It glitched for a long time that time. And look, the enemy is so strategic. Like, girl, I'll be like waiting to hear the next thing, and then it's like,
what's the last thing you?
So go back. When you said, like, when you go into that church and you expose these things, and then you experience the freedom, and I lost you after that.
Saying that, I feel like when you go to, like, say you go to a place and you're worried, if everybody knew this about me, or like in my hometown, or if everybody knew I really came home from college, if everybody knew this person I really slept with, or if everybody knew what I really had, this STD, or all these things. But when you go and you tell them, and these people are not shaming you, and they grab you in an embrace, and then you start being healed, the devil doesn't have power over you anymore. In that you don't have scary thoughts anymore. You don't have nightmares about it anymore. You're not walking around with your coat zipped up, worried about people. You can become free. And when I became free, when I told my story, and when I started breaking off of the people pleasing and the shame, and I started finding hobbies that I wanted to do, people thought I was going to nursing school at my age when I had these kids. There were people in another Bible study group that I used to go to. You can't do that. You don't need to be doing all that. But it's like, I'm a new creation. I'm just now living, and I'm about to live. I'm about to get all the things that God had for me.
All of them.
Because guess what? Now I get paid to help people.
Right.
Now, and just like even that, just like even being a nurse, to a pediatric nurse, every nurse, I don't know why some of these people went into nursing, but I say that, yes, I get paid for it, but it's the joy that I get going to work and sharing the real me. I am not being embarrassed, not being to read my Bible at my desk, not being ashamed to pray for a patient in front of the other nurse. Like when I'm free, because, and I would dare to say that if I had became a nurse in my 20s before I met Christ, I would not go on a patient room praying for them. Right. I'm not going to read a Bible at no nurse station. That's weird. You know what I'm saying? That's just go over there, read a Bible. No, because I wanted to fit in so bad. But that freedom now, experiencing that, it changed how I'm mothering my children. It changes the things I talk to them about. It changes how I respond to people at work. At work, there, when I got there, I was like, these people off the chain. Just like they just talk about guns, and I was like, this is a children's hospital. It's so nasty. Why are we reading the Bible in a year? Why I got a Bible study group of nurses? Because going and being who I am, being transparent, telling people at my job. Oh, I used to be where you were. Yes, I used to be all over the place with everybody. Yes, I was expelled from college. Yes, I did these things. The freedom that it brings even them,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, not being ashamed. I've had 2 miscarriages. That's not, I will tell you about them. You know, that's not taboo,
Right.
and it people can encounter Jesus that way, and it's just the experience. It's just been amazing of being free from that little girl who was just want to please everybody, and how that blew up in my face.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
then when you take that shame off, like, it's like I think about that scripture too. It's like you take off that spirit of heaviness and you put on that garment of heaviness and put on a spirit of praise. Like, that's real. That
Yeah.
shame, that just, I mean, you walking around. I remember telling Mama one time, I said, I guess I'll just go and walk with my head down off for the rest of my life. And she said, why you gonna do that? She didn't know the burdens I was carrying. She didn't know the embarrassing things I had done. She didn't know all the shame that I was
Right.
dealing with. And talk to her about those things.
Right. Right.
I couldn't tell her, and so now when I'm walking with a pep in my step, and I'm free
Yeah.
because there's no more strings on me. There's no more things holding me down. I don't have any heavy burdens. I don't have anything in my backpack. I tell it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Same. Same. And it not only frees you, it frees other people. It like you said, it will help people see. You were saying something earlier, and I was like, that seems so crazy, but it's almost like, um, and not to the degree of him being angry, but you know how with the Incredible Hulk, how he'd start out as that little guy, and he's got his
Yeah.
head down, and it was like something would make him angry though, and he'd turn into this thing, and his clothes would rip off, but it almost feels like that when that word was spoken that freed you,
Mhm.
it didn't turn you angry, but it just made you want out of this prison. And like that's the thing, like when you get in that spot, and like I said, anger was his driver, but just wanting freedom, wanting peace, wanting all that was your driver. And it just breaks it off. And people, like when you get those first few things out and you see that somebody's not like, you did what? Girl, how could you? When somebody is like, I
Mhm.
understand,
Yeah.
it allows you to then be able to say more. You just need somebody who's willing to listen, not judge.
And I had people like that. I had people so at
Thanks
that
so
church.
much for joining us today. If you've been blessed by today's show, feel free to let us know. And if you'd like to sow into this ministry, become a sponsor, or contact us, you can reach us at 803-221-0169. Or you can email us at the ssbbshow@gmail.com. Let's continue this journey together.